But first, the Trump administration's latest move. It is now issuing a new policy aimed at ending transgender-related care for inmates in federal prisons. The president, once again, delivering on his promise to instill a culture of common sense in America. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Compagno here with my co-host, Harris Faulkner. And also joining us today, Kennedy, host of the Kennedy Saves the World podcast, Cheryl Casoni, Fox Business anchor and host of American Dream Home on Fox Business, and Guy Benson, Fox News political analyst and host of The Guy Benson Show on Fox News Radio. Now, according to the new policy from the Bureau of Prisons, it, quote, will not provide sex trait modification surgeries to address gender dysphoria. The move builds on an executive order that President Trump signed last year aimed at terminating these procedures. An excerpt from that reads this, quote, the federal prison system shall ensure that no federal funds are expended for any medical procedure, treatment, or drug for the purpose of conforming an inmate's appearance to that of the opposite sex. Now, it's a full circle moment for the infamous ad in the 2024 election when President Trump highlighted then Vice President Kamala Harris's position on this issue. Watch.
Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
Kamala is for they, them. President Trump is for you.
But the ACLU is now pushing back, arguing that the new policy disregards the medical needs of the inmates and would be, quote, dangerous. But right now, 5 states are introducing laws to scale back their gender treatment policies. This includes Kansas, Idaho, Utah, Oklahoma, Florida. Even in Democrat strongholds like New York City and Massachusetts, top hospitals are now ending their trans youth programs. Guy, let's sort of start broadly with your thoughts on this, and then we can dig into the details.
So I want to start on the politics, because the clip of the ad that we played, that was, according to the Trump campaign, their most effective ad in the 24 cycle. That broke through a lot of the noise, and I think exposed Kamala Harris as quite extreme on these issues. And it was a shortcut for voters to say, okay, that person is out of step with me. There's an interesting story that I saw just in the last couple of days from Politico, I believe, that quoted a bunch of Democrats getting angry at these activist groups on these questions, forcing their candidates to fill out questionnaires in support of things like these types of policies. And what the Democrats have been saying is, you're putting us in a bad position, guys. We want to support these positions that I think a lot of Americans disagree with, but we don't want to write them down to have that stance used against us in a general election. So I think this will probably put more pressure on that front and add to that political dilemma that Democrats are facing.
What do you think?
I think there are a lot of problems within the federal prison system, and there are a lot of ways that politicians could work together on both sides of the aisle. And, you know, it's not to say, like, prison should be great and fun and super easy, but it also shouldn't be torturous and draconian, and there are no conjugal visits, and there is no way to achieve parole in the federal prison system. And maybe an all-or-nothing approach is going too far. So maybe, you know, if you have inmates who have been incarcerated for a long time and, you know, they have been reliant upon hormone therapy, maybe that's a different class of people than the guys who are like, oh, wait, I can just say I'm a woman and I go to a women's prison. And, you know, there are some people who have been accused of sexually assaulting their female fellow inmates. And obviously that's wrong. And I think there are some times where you have to see that there are subtleties. And I actually think the president has been really, really good on criminal justice and reforming the system in positive ways. And I think in order to make a political statement, you don't want to go too far, because what's going to happen is you're going to have people like Gavin Newsom that are going to force the pendulum in the opposite direction. And he is going to defend all of the people who might be affected by this new policy.
Yeah, Harris.
Well, it's interesting. That's an excellent point, by the way, Kennedy, like you always make. And to further that idea, so if you give an opening for the left to come in and say, well, you don't care about these people, so on and so forth, that's not what this is about. This is about holding the line and protecting other people. You talk about the rapes in prison. It hasn't happened just a couple of times. It's a problem. This addresses that. But Trump has done the one thing as a president that we always know he does. He's got everybody talking. And so now there will be this, whatever it will look like, to try to, whether it's an argument, debate, whatever it is, to try to get to a point. And look, we need to do something because you tacitly as a government are saying, local and federal, you're saying, yeah, gender identity and however you want to be will put you wherever you think you need to be. Governments don't need to be doing that. We have science that helps doing that. And so this kind of forces that back into the conversation, I would think. So if you're 6'5" and you're a dude, but you identify a different way, calling you whatever name, that's fine. Give us your first name, but you have to go to the men's prison. And now feelings aren't part of that, your personal opinion, your politics, none of that. It would just be the law. But like Kennedy said, you have to be careful not to overreach because then you won't accomplish anything.
Well, I think the political discussion, is fascinating in all of this. I agree with you. On the financial side, because you know me, I hate to see taxpayer dollars wasted. I was looking at the Federal Bureau of Prisons policies, how much they have spent over the last several years. They did some congressional testimony back in 2023, and they talked about how much they had spent on actually this kind of care. What they said was it was about $153,000 on gender-affirming hormone therapy. There was one surgery I found in 2022 under the Federal Bureau of Prisons. It was for a woman. But within this executive order, and I think this is actually a good thing from the president, they are going to continue to offer counseling, antidepressants. I don't have a problem with that, in particular with some of the violence we have seen in the last few weeks. On the other side of this, though, is that, as far as blanket policy, when I dug into what the states have been doing, there is, I think, some egregious overreach, whether it is not just the medical side of this, but also the pronouns, looking at what they were doing in Oklahoma and Utah, putting this into federal policy and workforce policy. That, I think, bothers me more than anything else, because you're dictating how you are supposed to be acting in your quote-unquote office setting, which, as you know, can be a government office, just like it can be a corporate office. And don't get me started on how many corporations have said, enough is enough with all of this. Yeah. And it's been very clear.
Just one quick thing, because you mentioned the hospital systems changing their policy with kids. To me, that is a whole separate issue.
Yes. I agree.
This is unscientific. These experiments they've been doing on children, much of the West, following the actual science, has sprinted away from these experiments. The United States has lagged behind, I think, because of politics and ideology. It is long overdue to stop this for children. Adults are a different, thornier question.
I want to sort of also make sure that viewers understand exactly where we are and how we got here. So this is all born out of the 8th Amendment, which ensures and should, that the courts uphold to ensure medically necessary treatment for inmates. And we want that, right? We want that inmates under the care of the BOP, we want to make sure that they are being taken care of. So since then, however, there's been a patchwork of court decisions at the federal level and never at the top that disagree on what is medically necessary. I'm sure you guys can, predict which states like Oregon deem transgender changes as medically necessary, and other states say, no, it's not. Now, the gamut goes up until and includes surgeries. And what I appreciate about this executive order, to your point, is that this is saying if someone has gender dysphoria, then we will provide counseling and antidepressants to it. So indeed providing, in my opinion, adequate and necessary medical care for that. It's these rogue states and district courts that have been determining what is medically necessary means a complete sex change. Now, secondly, there's a legal and constitutional protection for inmates that arrive to prison with a pre-existing condition. So to Kennedy's point, those that inside or after the conviction say, oh, guess what, I'm a woman, get to benefit from the generosity of those patchwork quilt court decisions and from the generosity of our tax dollars that say, oh, sure, you're telling me you're Sally now? Well, we're going to approve that. So this EO also takes that into account and says those that have come to the table in this certain way, sure, we will provide that continually. This, by the way, only affects about 1,000 inmates in the system. So the amount of litigation, our tax dollars, and time that have been wasted on this very tiny population, many of whom in this specific situation are taking advantage of that generosity, to me is the colossal waste of the century. What do we need? We need the Supreme Court to weigh in.
When do we need it?
We need it now. And the Supreme Court has thus far rejected cert to answer this question once and for all. Are transgender hormone therapies medically necessary? The answer needs to be no, so that all of us can stop talking about it.
Did we learn anything this week? Because we've been talking about this on the couch with regard to what is necessary and what is not. I think we've learned through the minor surgery decisions that have been made on children and why NYC Langone is now kind of leading the pack with that. Could be financial, but they're scooping up the morality of it along the way. But didn't we learn from some of this week that really what benefits is not the surgery. In fact, it may exacerbate the problem of the mental health, and that is kind of the key area, that support and that help medically that really actually works. So taking these off the table, taking that transition surgery off the table for inmates is also consistent with what the science is showing us.
Right, which was like the point you made, that the real science backs support in a different way. Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.